Hello, we just want to do a brief introduction here into this video. This is a special video. This will be part of what I am calling the sermon series.
Okay.
Because we have the two sermon series from before, but this sermon is not like my previous two when I tried to pretend to be a pastor when I'm not a pastor. This one is more like our Bible study that we normally do. So it's on angels and demons. The only thing I really get through is angels with
Okay.
a brief touch into demons at the end. But we hope you enjoy it.
Enjoy, everyone.
I am not the pastor here. All right. That sound okay? Maybe? Maybe. Don't move. Ooh, whoa, too loud. All right. How's that? Okay, so I should give you a warning. Yes, this is angels and demons. Chances are we're not going to get into demons today because there's too much stuff about angels. So, and I'm just going to do a brief overview. And the subtitle is an introduction into angelology. That's just the fancy name for studying for angels in the Bible. That's all it is. It's just there's no better way of saying it than that. So let me figure out where I'm actually at here. I need to find my notes. And I want to just the reason I chose this topic. First of all, I'm not the one that chose it. You need to blame Michelle for this because I may have procrastinated a little bit. And last Saturday, about 5 o'clock in the evening, I finally decided I should probably start putting notes together for this week. I couldn't think of anything. So I asked the family, is there anything that you guys have been studying on, something that you want me to teach about Sunday? Well, Michelle was the only one that replied. So you can also blame the rest of my family.
I didn't listen to the podcast yet. That's why.
Well, it wasn't about the podcast.
Yeah, but like she said, you talked about it at the end of your last podcast.
Oh, well, yeah.
What you talked about.
I have mentioned stuff about the devils because during the podcast, we are currently working on Matthew 4, 1 through 11, which is the temptation of Jesus. The devil is very highly involved in that story. And so we have mentioned the devil before. And I said some stuff about the devil and demons. And Michelle thought it was very intriguing. And so she's like, well, can you also talk about the angels in the Bible? So she asked about angels and the devil. So obvious title is Angels and Demons, the easiest title I could think of. And so I sit down about 5 minutes. I have like 30 bullet points of things I could talk about. Like, oh, this is gonna be easy. We'll get this knocked out. Then you start actually studying into the angels and angelology and all that other stuff. And it is the deepest rabbit hole I've seen in a long time. So I'm still falling in this rabbit hole. So this is just going to be a overview of the angels and heavenly creatures and the heavenly hosts in the Bible. It's not going to be in depth. I'm not including everything because otherwise we'll be here all day. So I'm just going to do a brief overview. So we're going to talk about, like I said, the holy angels and spiritual beings in the Bible. There are two different classes because there are the spiritual beings like the seraphim, cherubim, the what they call the living creatures, and they're all technically considered living creatures. But there is also a section where they're just called living creatures. They're not given the name seraphim or cherubim, and we'll cover all these. There's going to be a lot of scripture coming today. I'm going to just go through. I got one, maybe two different scriptures for each type of angel or spiritual being. So we're going to go through all this. The other type is the holy angels or heavenly hosts, and that would include the archangel, ministering angels, watchers, and guardian angels. And again, these are all mentioned in the Bible. There are more than this. And some people will say that, guardian angels aren't specifically mentioned in the Bible, but there are passages in the Bible referring to guardian angels, even though there are no angels that are directly said, hey, these are guardian angels. So we'll cover that whenever we get to that section. So I'll try not to talk too fast, but I got like 6 or 7 pages of notes here. And did anybody start a timer, by the way? Anybody? Michelle's not here.
Michelle's not here.
I guess I'll start my own timer.
Why do you need a timer?
Because I'll talk too long if I don't.
Okay.
Okay. So Spiritual beings. Uh, these creatures are never given the title of angels in the Bible. A lot of people refer to them as angels. They'll say, "Hey, these are the angels of the Bible," but they are never actually called angels. Most often, they are simply called living creatures. And even whenever we get into the ones about the cherubim, they will actually say these were the living creatures, and I knew they were cherubim. So they're often referred to as living creatures. They spend most of their time either worshiping or ministering to God when He's on His throne. So again, this is something else we'll cover as we get into it. They are created beings. They are not God. They do not share God's attributes. They are limited. This is one of the things that we mentioned at the end of the last podcast about Satan. Satan is not God. He does not have God's attributes. This goes for the angels and the living creatures as well. They are not omnipresent. They are not omnipotent. They are not omniscient. That means they are not all powerful. They are limited in their power. They are not everywhere at once. Though they can travel fast, they cannot be in more places than one at a time. And also, they are, what's the one I missed? They're not all knowing. They're very intelligent, but they are not all knowing. Only God is all knowing. So, though they have superhuman and supernatural abilities, they are not God. This goes for Satan as well. So, that's something that is very important to understand. So, the holy angels would include the archangel, ministering angels, watchers, and guardian angels. So, again, the definition of angel is messenger. So that's why the cherubim, the seraphim, the living creatures, they're not technically angels because they never give a message. They never directly communicate with us. That could be argued, but every time that those holy or those living creatures are mentioned, they're in a vision. Angels actually come down to earth and give messages to humans directly. So angels are messengers, first and foremost. Um, they are God's workforce, and therefore they are at his command. They are often depicted as tall, powerful, bright men. And by bright, I mean they're shining, they're brilliant, they have a radiance about them. And every single time they are in the figure of a man. There are no female angels in the Bible. All of that type of stuff and the same goes that no angel, as in a messenger of God that is viewed as a man, is ever said to have wings. Angels don't have wings. That being said, what was I going to say? I don't remember. Oh, all those misconceptions come from a story or a poem, an epic poem called Paradise Lost by John Milton. And it was just a really long poem. And I started doing research into it last night. And basically, he took the biblical characters, the biblical setting, basically the creation story. So Adam and Eve at the beginning with God and Satan. But he's mixed in some other stuff from the Bible, completely mixed up the order, changed some of the details, and then it's some of those depictions, the things that he explained. He's the one that gave angels wings. He's the one that did some of this other stuff. So a lot of the common beliefs that we have today as Christians in popular society or whatever you want to call it, it's coming from stuff like that. And as we get into the cherubim, some of it comes from artwork as well. So that's just something we need to realize that there are no angels in the Bible, and by angels I mean the figures that show up as man. They do not have wings. Also, we do not become angels when we die. That is another popular misconception. We do go into heaven. We become a spiritual being. Our spirit will leave our body. Our body dies, decays, turns into nothing. Our spirit goes on to heaven, goes to be with God. But we're in a spirit form. Now we can manipulate our spirit form to look like whatever figure we want, but we do not have bodies, and we will not have bodies again until Jesus comes again in the whole tribulation and everything happens. Then we will receive our new bodies. So we don't cease to exist. We still exist, just in a spiritual form. We do not become angels. And like I said, with the living creatures, angels were created. And not only were they created, there is actual, in the Bible, they say that they do not want to be worshipped. They should not be worshipped. We are not to worship angels or the living creatures. We are to worship God, the Trinity. So it's something else that we need to know. All right, so we're going to get into the actual spiritual beings. And so now we're going to start going through all these scriptures. And we're going to start with the seraphim. And so seraphim means fiery or burning ones. And this is the only place they're mentioned is Isaiah 6, 1-3. So this reads, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. So these are seraphim. These are considered a part of the living creatures, the spiritual beings. They are not said to be angels here. They are not giving a message. Here, they're just being viewed as flying around God on his throne, praising him. Holy, holy, holy. 3 holies, 1 holy for each member of the Trinity. So this is their job. This is what they do. It also says they have 6 wings. 2 of them cover their feet. Why? Because it kind of represents the fact that they are not worthy to be in God's presence. The same with the covering their face. It's kind of a way of saying that they are not worthy to look upon God. And then they use 2 to fly, and then they just hover around and worship God all day. So that'd be an interesting job. The next one is the cherubim. So this type of living creature is mentioned the most in the Bible. They are mentioned 92 times in 13 different books. So they are mentioned a lot. And despite popular belief, a cherub is not a pudgy little baby with a bow or harp or wings just floating around all nice and cute. That is not a cherub. So that type of cherub came from an artistic rendering from the Renaissance era and was originally called a putti, which came from the Latin word putus, which means boy. I don't know if I'm saying those words. I don't speak those languages, but it came from a word that means boy. Well, at that same time, the artistic image of Cupid was also changed to a similar type image. Before, Cupid was adolescent, well, probably like a teenage, young male, fully adult male, but young, late teens, early 20s. And that was the original artistic rendering of Cupid. At this same time, they turned Cupid into a younger, more toddler type image as well. Well, then these 2 images kind of formed and became one category. And that category was supposed to be a representation of love. And since they had wings like angels and represented love, then people made that correlation that, well, God is love. So these creatures with wings that look like angels must obviously represent love, and therefore they must be cherub for some reason. So that modern, and everybody's seen this image of, if I was prepared to put images up on here, but I wasn't prepared. But everybody's seen the image of that pudgy little Cupid looking baby that is called a cherub. That is not a cherub. The actual description of a cherub comes from Ezekiel 10:14 and 20-21. So this reads, and everyone had 4 faces. All right, I don't remember those little babies having 4 faces, but these cherub have 4 faces. The first face was the face of a cherub. What's that look like? I don't know. And the second face was a human face. Okay. And the third, the face of a lion. And the fourth, the face of an eagle. These are the living creatures that I saw underneath the God of Israel by the Shebar Canal. And I knew that they were cherubim. Each had 4 faces and each 4 wings, and underneath their wings, the likeness of human hands. I didn't see anything there that referenced a chubby little baby with a harp and a bow. So, yeah, these are, and this isn't the full description. I could have wanted even more, but it even gets weirder past that because they are on these wheels going different directions, spin every which direction. Inside the wheels, the spirit, they're completely covered in eyes, like underneath the wings, in the back, everywhere, there's eyes, which the eyes represent the fact that God is omniscient, he sees everything, he knows everything. So it represents, God's power. But none of that. No, there's no chubby is not in there. Cute is not in there. These are scary creatures. Like if one of these showed up right now, we would all be running for cover because they are scary. Like I said, these are everywhere, and these are even as far back as Genesis. So in Genesis 3:24 it says, and this is where God is kicking Adam and Eve out of the Eden. And it says, he drove out the man, and at the east of the Garden of Eden, he placed the cherubim and a flaming sword that turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. And like I said, there's 92 references to cherubim, so I'm just going to stop there because they're everywhere. But again, these have 4 wings. They are never mentioned giving a message to man. They have been referenced as literally being which I never actually seen this reference, but the cherubim, and they were acting as a chariot for God, where God actually rode them to transport them from one place to another. They're everywhere. But then the last ones in this category are living creatures, and this is just kind of a broad term. But there's said to be 4 of them, and these creatures, they also have the 6 wings. They each have their own faces. They don't have 4 faces. They each have their own face, which is a face of a lion, eagle, human, and ox. And they spend their time worshiping God. So we see these in Revelation 4, 6b through 8. And by 6b, it's just the second half of 6. So it says, and around the throne, on each side of the throne, are 4 living creatures, full of eyes in the front and behind. The first living creature like a lion, the second living creature like an ox, the third living creature with the face of a man, and the fourth living creature like an eagle in flight. And the 4 living creatures, each of them with 6 wings, are full of eyes all around and within. And day and night they never cease to say, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. So to me, again, there's no reference to this, but they seem like seraphim to me because they have the 6 wings. Because if we actually remember where you talked about the reference to seraphim, they had their faces covered, they had their feet covered. There's really not much description of what they were. When they are actually called seraphim, the only thing they're doing is flying and worshiping God. Here we have these creatures separated, and they have the 6 wings, and now you see their faces. And what are they doing? They're saying the same thing that the seraphim were saying. Holy, holy, holy. We said it a little bit different, but they're still worshiping God. There's no reference to this. This is just me thinking and putting some pieces together. I could be completely wrong, but it's something worth thinking about. But the fact these 4 faces, the 4 creatures, a lion, an ox, man, and an eagle, this is said to represent the 4 most powerful creatures God created. So, lion is the king of the jungle. Man, we're the most dominant creature here on earth. Eagle is probably the most dominant creature of the sky. And the ox is probably the most powerful domestic animal that we have. So these are supposed to represent, the greatest things that God has created. And they spend their days, again, like the seraphim, just worshiping God all day. So the next thing we have is the holy angels. And we're going to start with the archangel. And I say archangel because only one angel is ever given the title of archangel. And the actual definition of archangel is, well, it comes from the Greek word archangelos. Sure, maybe I said that right, which means chief angel. So he is, an archangel is the chief angel. And like I said, there's only one chief angel mentioned, and that is Michael. Michael is the only one given that title. And we see this in Jude 1:9. But when the archangel Michael, contending with the devil, was disputed about the body of Moses, he did not presume to pronounce a blasphemous judgment, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." So this is the only place where Michael is said to be the archangel. But as we now, Michael is also considered to be a warrior angel. He is mentioned more, but typically he is a warrior. He is fighting. So Daniel 10:13 tells us, "The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days." Now, the person speaking here is the angel Gabriel. So Gabriel is talking to Daniel. So the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I was left there with the kings of Persia. So notice that this said Michael was one of the chief princes. It didn't say he was the chief prince. So it is possible there are more chief princes. But like I said, there's only one actually given that title. Gabriel is considered to be an archangel, but he's never given that title. But I mean, he was obviously fighting of some sort, but his typical mission, every time we see Gabriel, he is giving a message. And he has been given some of the most important messages. He's the one that prophesied about John the Baptist to Zechariah in the temple. He's the one that went to Mary and told Mary, "Hey, you're going to give birth to Jesus." I mean, he's the one that's giving all these big important messages, but he's never given the title of archangel. Now, maybe he is an archangel. We don't know, but maybe he would be like an archangel of the messaging angels, where Michael would be the archangel of the warring angels. I don't know. The Bible never tells us that. So that's all speculation. Whether it's true or not, we'll probably figure it out someday when we get to heaven. This probably all makes sense to us then. But for now, we don't know. But where we see Gabriel is in like Luke 1:19. And the angel answered him, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I was sent to speak to you and to bring you this good news." So this is the point where Gabriel was talking to Zechariah about John the Baptist. So, and there he mentioned that he stands in the presence of God. So he has a high position, even as, just being a messenger or whatever. He has a high position because he stands with God. Now, once we get into Watchers and these other angels, it starts to get into the fringe of things. This is where some people will take this stuff and just have these crazy stories. I know around the Watchers is the story of the Nephilim. I don't know if anybody knows about the Nephilim, but these Watchers are associated with that story. But where we're going to talk about now is in Daniel 4:3. Daniel 4:13 through 14 and 17. So this is where Nebuchadnezzar has a dream or a vision, and he's telling Daniel about this vision. So it says, "I saw in the visions of my head as I lay in bed, and behold, a watcher, a holy one, came down from heaven. He proclaimed aloud and said thus, chop down the tree and lop off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beast flee from under it and the birds from its branches.
The sentence is by the decree of the watchers, the decision by the word of the holy ones, to the end that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will, and sets over it the lowliest of men. So, so in this situation, the watcher came down to Daniel or to Nebuchadnezzar in his dream and gave him this message. Which then, if you would read on, I was kind of nitpicking because I didn't want to read too much into this, so it would be here for a while. But this is a key example of a messenger. He came down to Nebuchadnezzar in his dream and gave him a message. The message was this tree that was chopped down was representing Nebuchadnezzar, and that basically Nebuchadnezzar was going to lose his kingdom. But they left the stump there, representing that he would come back. And if you read Daniel, that's what happens. So the next one we have is ministering angels. And this is pretty straightforward. And ministering angels and guardian angels kind of go together, but they are mentioned separately. Like ministering angels are actually mentioned in Matthew 4:11, which is something that in the podcast we're going to be studying here in the next few months. But it says, Matthew 4:11 says, Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and were ministering to him. So the whole story behind this, in the temptation story, I'll try not to go on too big of a tangent. This is what I've been studying a lot. But Jesus is on the verge of starvation. He is literally starving to death in the scene. And Jesus just went through the 3 temptations with the devil. At the end of the 3rd temptation, Jesus tells the devil to basically get out, like, leave us alone. The devil leaves, and as soon as the devil leaves, the temptations end, and the ministering angels come in. Well, we don't know exactly what the ministering angels are doing, but considering the fact that Jesus spent 40 days not eating a single bite on the verge of starvation, they were probably coming in to give him food. What that food was like, we don't know. Possibly manna, means we're angels from heaven. But I don't want to get too far into the whole wordplay of it, but to minister to somebody in this context literally means to serve them food. I won't. I know that sounds vague, but I don't have time to get into deep into that. So there is evidence in the way this is worded that they were coming to give him food. So they are taking care of him. He was at a point which he was separated from God during this temptation, but he was to the point that he needed help or he was going to die. He was out in the middle of nowhere. So that's what these angels were coming to do, and they were getting him back to health so he could continue his mission. And then guardian angels, like I said, these aren't specifically mentioned. There's nowhere that says your guardian angels, whatever. That's not there. But in Psalm 91, 9 through 13, this very highly points to the fact that we have guardian angels. So it says, Because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge, no evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against the stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent will trample underfoot. So I know some of this sounds kind of weird, the wording's kind of weird. And I actually did a in-depth study on these verses that we will have in the podcast here in the next 2 weeks. Might be next week. So what this is saying, that anybody who accepts God as their Lord and Savior, accepts Jesus into their life, anybody who accepts the Most High and they put all their faith into him, no evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague come near your tent. Saying no evil. It doesn't say we're not going to go through hard times. It doesn't say we're not going to struggle. We're going to have the baptisms of fire. We're going to have those struggles, those hard times. But those will be sanctioned by God in order to help us to become better people, better Christians, better brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, whatever. Those struggles will help us become better. But there will be no evil in them. There will be no true evil in them. They will be for good. They will be for our benefit, not for our hardship. For he will command his angels. Here, this is saying that God commands his angels. Concerning you, guarding you in all your ways. That means in everything you're doing, in your day-to-day life. This is what they do. They are going to protect you. And this may seem weird because they're protecting you right now. You never know. You never know what's going to happen without the guardian angels there. I mean, we are surrounded by danger all the time. And I really want to go on a tangent right now, but I don't really think I should. No, I really don't. So watch the podcast whenever I cover this. I have a great story I'm going to tell that involves me, my grandma Kunk, church, and a sledgehammer. It's a great story. Great story. Anyways, so again, let's continue. On their hands they will bear you up lest you strike your foot against a stone. And then you will tread on the lion and the adder. The devil is referred to as a roaring lion in the Bible. So this is referring to the devil. So it's saying you will tread on the devil, and the adder is a snake. It's a specific type of snake somewhere in this world. So it's saying that he will tread on the lion and the snake. The young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot. And this refers back to the Genesis story where basically says that whenever he's talking to the serpent, that the serpent will bruise his heel and he will bruise his head. I don't know if I said that right. I might have said it backwards, but you kind of get the idea. And before we wrap this up, I want to just mention Satan and the demons. So the Satan and demons, well, first of all, Satan, devil, tempter, these are all titles. These are not the devil's name. We don't know what the devil's name is. They don't put it in the Bible for good reason. We don't need to know it. That'd give him too much power. We don't need to know what his name is. So whenever we say Satan, know that that just means adversary. That's it. When we say devil, that just means, somebody who stands opposed to us. So these are titles. These are not names. So that's something that we need to know and realize as Christians. But also know that they are angels. Satan is an angel. The demons, they're angels. They're called fallen angels because they have fallen out of God's grace. And this is where I could go on a huge tangent, and I'm just going to try to wrap this up. But the big thing I want to highlight is the fact that since these are angels, we need to realize that they are also not God. They do not have God's attributes. They are not all powerful. They are not all knowing. They are not everywhere at once. They are limited, just like the angels are. And we have power over them as Christians. Just like Jesus said at the end of, well, it would have been Matthew 4:10, begone Satan. He said it to, was it Peter? Jesus told Peter, he said, get behind me, Satan, whenever Peter was trying to oppose him. Again, by using Satan, he's just saying adversary. So, but demons, Satan, they are created beings. They are not all powerful. We have power over them. We just tell them to get out of our lives, and they have no choice but to flee. And I think that's all I'm going to talk about. Pretty good. 30 minutes. I was impressed. Unless anybody wants to hear more.
Oh, I said keep going.
You said keep going? What do you want to talk about? Hold on, let me see what I got here. So here's something we can talk about. And see, now I don't have any notes for this. Ezekiel, it's in Ezekiel. There's a story where God tells Ezekiel to give a warning to the Prince of Tyre. And there's also one in there about the King of Tyre. But in this is where we get, be nice if I could look it up. Is the story of it's giving a warning to the Prince of Tyre, but a lot of people say that he is trying to kind of changing it and referencing another story. And it may not be directly the story of the devil, but it is, and here's something else that kind of goes with it. In the story about Adam and Eve, whenever Eve was tempted, it never said that tempter, we are given it the name of devil, of Satan. That creature was never actually named in the Bible to be the devil or Satan. It was just a serpent. Now it had devil and Satan like tendencies, but it was never said to be that exact figure. But going back to this Prince of Tyre story, the way it is worded in that in that Ezekiel scripture, it is saying that the Prince of Tyre was present in the Garden of Eden. Well, wait a minute. There's only two people that we know of in the Garden of Eden. Well, I guess you could say three, is Adam, Eve, and God. So, well, you read on in this, and it's obviously not talking about God or anybody good. And it's not talking about Adam or Eve. So who is it referring to? Well, it has to be the serpent, this talking serpent. That's the only other person that was there in the garden at that time. So now this whole warning against the Prince of Tyre is now being thrown back and being compared to the serpent that was in the Garden of Eden. Well, then it goes on and it says that this serpent, this created being, was beautiful and perfect in every single way, like extremely intelligent, the smartest of all the other created angels. Well, this serpent, this created being, was a guardian cherub. So now we have this image of this serpent in the garden now being referred to as a guardian cherub, which is one of the highest ranking positions in heaven, according to the Bible. And well, now with this reference to the serpent, now we're saying this is most likely Satan, or the Satan character that we have named. So again, we talk about these artistic figures. The Satan isn't some red dude with horns with a pitchfork. Chances are he looks more like a cherub that could possibly have four faces, four wings, wheels that go every which direction, eyes everywhere. So whenever we picture the devil, this is the type of image we need to be picturing, not the red pitchfork dude with horns. But you want me to keep going? We can leave whenever you want to leave. We'll wrap it up there. 8 more minutes. Why? Sure, everybody's ready to leave. Is it possible to end early? I'm done.
We hope you enjoyed that sermon series. We hope to be able to finish more of this in the future, whenever our pastor goes on vacation.
Yeah,
And
so
that's
stay
when
tuned for part 2 of the Angels and Demons
There
series.
may even be part 3 and 4.
Knowing you, probably will be.
There's a lot about the angels and demons that I haven't got into yet. So we just thank you for watching. Make sure you check out all the rest of our videos on our YouTube channel and also check out our podcast. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. What is going on?